He always told me, "Don't embarrass this family," whenever I asked about missing charity funds, inflated renovation invoices, and the bruises on my mother's arms. I learned to smile, take notes, and wait for the right dining room, the right oak table, the right moment when someone loses control. This Thanksgiving, I walked into the house where I grew up, but I didn't walk in alone, because when the glass fell, when the first blow landed, that's when my guest reached for their badge and revealed their identity. My name is Rachel Wynn, and I've spent the last 12 years building a career on finding what people try to hide, as compliance lead at North Lake Systems in Riverton, Ohio. I've learned that numbers never lie. They just wait for someone patient enough to listen. The call came on a Tuesday morning in October, Pastor Williams from New Hope Church, thanking Harold, my stepfather, for completing the roof renovation under budget. I wouldn't have thought twice about it, except the invoice copy that crossed my desk at work showed we'd approved a community grant for $47,000. Harold's company, Pike & Sons Renovations, had supposedly saved the church nearly $20,000. That should have been good news. Instead, it made my skin crawl. I'd grown up watching Harold Pike transform from the charming contractor who swept my mother off her feet into something else entirely. The man who gripped her wrist too tight at dinner parties, who slammed doors hard enough to crack the frame when questioned about money, who taught my half-brother Liam that real men don't ask questions, they follow orders. "Rachel, honey, you're overthinking again," my mother Elaine had said when I mentioned the church project over our weekly coffee. Her fingers unconsciously rubbed her forearm where last month's accident with the cabinet door had left yellowing marks. "Harold works so hard for this community. Don't make problems where there aren't any." But there were problems. I pulled the contractor bids from the church's public records. Pike & Sons had quoted premium materials, architectural shingles, copper flashing, top-grade underlayment. I drove past New Hope that evening. Even from the street, I could see the standard 3-tab shingles reflecting in the setting sun. My office at North Lake overlooked the loading dock where Harold's trucks sometimes picked up surplus materials. We had a community partnership. Companies could purchase overstock at cost for charitable projects. I'd approved Harold's applications myself, proud that my family was giving back. Now I wondered what else I'd approved without really looking. "You coming to Thanksgiving?" Liam texted me that night. At 22, he was already Harold's shadow, learning the business, absorbing the lessons. "Dad wants to make sure you'll be there. Says it's important for the family image." Family image. Harold had built his reputation on that foundation. The devoted stepfather, the charitable businessman, the pillar of Riverton's construction community. He served on the church board, sponsored youth baseball, and made sure everyone knew how generous Pike & Sons could be with their pricing for worthy causes. I started pulling records, permits, invoices, materials orders. Each document another thread in what was becoming a very expensive web. The pattern emerged slowly. Quotes for premium materials, purchases of standard grade, the difference presumably pocketed, small enough on each job to avoid attention, large enough over time to fund Harold's new boat, his cabin on Lake Erie, Liam's truck. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, I found the smoking gun, a supply order from Harbor Ridge Supplies, a company that existed only on paper, registered to Harold's cousin Diana. 12% of every charitable project had been flowing through that account, kicked back as consulting fees. "Just drop it," my friend Jordan Hale advised over drinks. As an assistant district attorney, she'd seen plenty of family dysfunction. "Or if you can't drop it, make sure you do it right. Document everything, create a chain of custody, and Rachel, don't confront him alone." But I wasn't planning to confront him alone. I was planning something much more public, because Harold had taught me well. Image was everything in our family, and Thanksgiving dinner, with extended family and his business associates always invited, would be the perfect stage. I made my preparations carefully, copied documents, verified records, built an airtight case that any compliance officer would admire, and when Harold called to confirm I'd be there for Thanksgiving, I assured him I wouldn't miss it for the world. Good, he'd said, his voice carrying that edge of command that made my mother flinch. And Rachel? Bring someone if you want. About time you settled down. I promised I would bring a guest. I just didn't mention what kind. The numbers painted a damning picture. Sitting in my home office at midnight, I mapped out Harold's scheme with the precision of a forensic accountant. Every inflated invoice followed the same pattern: 18 to 27% markup between quoted and actual materials. The New Hope Church roof was just the latest in a string of charitable projects that had lined Harold's pockets. I photographed everything: the actual invoices from legitimate suppliers showing Grade B composite shingles at $67 per square, Harold's quotes to clients showing Grade A architectural shingles at $95 per square. The metadata on the photos proved the purchase dates preceded the quotes. He knew exactly what he was buying before he sold the lie. Hands Across Riverton was supposed to help rebuild homes for struggling families. As a registered 501c3, every dollar mattered. I cross-referenced their EIN with Pike & Sons payment records and found $200,000 in contracts over 3 years. If Harold had stolen his usual percentage, that meant $36,000 meant for families in need had instead funded his toys. The Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I witnessed his violence firsthand. I'd stopped by my mother's house to drop off a pie dish when I heard the crash from the kitchen. I asked you a simple question, Elaine. Harold's voice carried through the wall. I found them by the sink, Harold gripping my mother's wrist, twisting it backward as she tried to pull away. A shattered coffee mug lay scattered across the floor. Mom, I said from the doorway. Harold released her immediately, his face shifting to that practiced smile. Rachel, your mother just had a little accident. Clumsy today, aren't you, honey? My mother nodded quickly, cradling her wrist. Just dropped my mug. You know how I am. Later, as I helped her bandage her wrist, just a sprain, she begged me not to make trouble. He's under stress with the business. The holidays always make him tense. Please, Rachel, just let it be. But I was done letting it be. That night, I called Jordan Hale. I need to know about construction fraud statutes, I said. And what constitutes assault versus domestic battery? Jordan walked me through the legal framework. In Ohio, contractor fraud over $150,000 was a third-degree felony. The charity angle made it worse. Defrauding a nonprofit added federal charges. She explained how to establish chain of custody for evidence, how to document injuries, how to create admissible recordings in a one-party consent state. But Rachel, she warned, gathering evidence is one thing, using it safely is another. I thought about safety as I planted a GPS tracker on Pike & Sons' main supply truck. Legally defensible since Harold had asked me to co-sign the loan, making me part owner. The tracker data would prove where materials actually went versus where invoices claimed. My breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Liam called, drunk after a crew party, rambling about guilt and family loyalty. You know what sucks? He slurred. Writing timesheets for guys who weren't even there. Dad says it's just paperwork, but those ghost workers, their hours go straight to the charity jobs. Makes me sign off as supervisor. I recorded the call, every word. The next morning, I drove to Pike & Sons' warehouse with my camera. Through the fence, I photographed pallets of roofing materials. The lot numbers on the bundles matched my records, materials purchased for the New Hope job. Grade B stock with manufacture dates that didn't match Harold's claims of special order premium supplies. That evening, I found emails in the public bid system with altered timestamps. Harold had submitted his quote 12 hours after awarding was announced, but the metadata showed the document created 3 days earlier. He'd known he'd win before the bidding opened. Wednesday night, Harold called a family meeting, sitting in my childhood dining room. I watched him perform his patriarch act, how business was booming, how Liam was becoming a real pike man, how important reputation was in a small city like Riverton. Speaking of reputation, he said, his eyes finding mine, I heard you've been asking questions about my business. Rachel, curious about our community projects. Just doing my job, I said evenly. Compliance requires attention to detail. His jaw tightened. Your job is at Northlake. My business is my business. Family doesn't investigate family. Family doesn't steal from charities. I thought but didn't say. Instead, I smiled. Of course, I was just impressed by your savings on the church roof. Quite remarkable. He studied me for a long moment. Thanksgiving's in 3 days. You still bringing that guest? Wouldn't miss it. That night, I compiled everything into a single encrypted folder. Invoices, photos, recordings, GPS data, bid documents. I sent copies to Jordan and my personal attorney. If something happened to me, the evidence would surface. Thursday morning, I made my final preparation. I called Harold's office. Quick question about the New Hope roof, I said casually. The invoice shows 30-year architectural shingles. But did you end up using the 25-year? Just wondering about the warranty difference. His pause told me everything. Why would you ask that? Just curious about roofing lifespans. See you at dinner. I hung up before he could respond. The seed was planted. Harold would arrive at Thanksgiving already on edge, already defensive, already primed to show his true face when pressed. All I needed now was the right moment to press. Sunday dinner was our family's dress rehearsal for Thanksgiving, and Harold never missed a performance. I arrived to find him holding court in the living room. Liam at his right hand like an heir apparent. My mother bustling between kitchen and dining room with practiced efficiency. There's our corporate star, Harold announced as I entered. Tell everyone, Rachel, how's life in the thrilling world of compliance? Still counting other people's pennies? The relatives chuckled politely. I took my assigned seat, far from Harold, as always, where my questions couldn't disrupt his stories. Someone has to make sure the numbers add up, I said, accepting a glass of wine from my mother. Her wrist was wrapped in an ace bandage, barely visible under her long sleeves. That's the problem with your generation, Harold continued, warming to his theme. Always looking for problems instead of solutions. In construction, we build things. We don't tear them down. Unless they're built on false foundations, I said quietly. The table went silent. Harold's knife paused halfway through his steak. What was that? Nothing. Just thinking about work. I smiled. We had a contractor try to pass off substandard materials last month. Amazing what people think they can get away with. Liam shifted uncomfortably. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for the water pitcher. Rachel, honey, she said quickly, why don't you tell everyone about that promotion you're up for? But Harold wasn't diverted. You know what I think? I think some people get a little authority and it goes to their heads. Start seeing criminals everywhere. Paranoid. Paranoid? I met his gaze. Or just thorough? He set down his knife with deliberate precision. Let me tell you something about thoroughness. I've built this business on relationships. Trust. Community standing. That's worth more than any spreadsheet. Absolutely, I agreed. Which is why it's so important to maintain that trust. One scandal can destroy years of reputation. The vein in his temple pulsed. The same one that appeared before he grabbed my mother's wrist, before doors slammed, before his voice dropped to that dangerous register. Speaking of trust, he said slowly, I heard you were at my warehouse the other day. Security camera caught you taking pictures through the fence. I hadn't seen cameras, but I didn't flinch. I was visiting the Northlake loading dock next door. Must be a mistake. Must be. His smile was all teeth. Because family respects boundaries. Isn't that right, Elaine? My mother nodded quickly. Of course. Rachel's always been respectful. Haven't you, sweetheart? The plea in her voice almost broke my resolve. But I thought of the charity families living under leaking roofs while Harold counted his boat payments. Always, I lied. After dinner, I helped clear plates while Harold pontificated about the bitter cold coming this winter and how some people might find themselves out in it if they're not careful. Liam avoided my eyes, focusing intently on folding napkins. In the kitchen, my mother cornered me by the dishwasher. What are you doing? She whispered fiercely. You know how he gets. Why are you provoking him? I'm not provoking anyone. I'm having dinner. Rachel, please. Tears gathered in her eyes. Thanksgiving is important to him. His brother's coming from Detroit. The Riverside Wellness Center board members will be here. Don't ruin this. I'm not ruining anything, I said, watching Harold through the serving window as he gestured dramatically, playing the successful businessman. I'm just bringing a guest, like he suggested. Who? Her voice cracked. Rachel, who are you bringing? Before I could answer, Harold appeared in the doorway. Private conversation? My mother stepped back instinctively. Just talking about Thursday's menu. Good, because I'd hate to think my girls were keeping secrets. He moved closer, and I smelled bourbon on his breath. Secrets are like termites. Rachel, they eat away at foundations until everything collapses. Interesting metaphor, I said, not backing down. Speaking from experience? His hand twitched. For a moment, I thought he might grab me like he grabbed her. Instead, he smiled. That cold, controlled expression that preceded his worst moments. Thursday's going to be special, he said. I can feel it, can't you? That night, I updated Jordan on the evening's tensions. She urged caution, but I was past that. I'd spent years being cautious while Harold terrorized my mother and robbed the community. Thursday would end it, one way or another. I made one final preparation. Using my authorized access at Northlake, I pulled Harold's vendor file. There it was. A purchase order for surplus shingles at cost, dated the same day he'd quoted premium materials to New Hope Church. The electronic signature was his, the approval mine, though I'd never seen the details he'd hidden in subsections. I'd approved my stepfather's theft without knowing it. The irony tasted bitter. But it also gave me standing. As a compliance officer who'd unknowingly facilitated fraud, I had not just the right, but the obligation to report it. The law would protect me as a whistleblower, especially with Jordan ready to act on my signal. Wednesday night, I texted Liam. I know about the ghost workers. We need to talk. His response came at 2 a.m. Please don't do this. Then help me stop him, I wrote back. The typing bubbles appeared and disappeared 5 times before his final message. I can't, but I won't stop you either. It was enough. When Thursday came, I'd have evidence, opportunity, and at least one family member who wouldn't defend Harold's lies. All that remained was surviving dinner long enough to serve justice as the final course. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I attended evening service at New Hope Church. Not for spiritual guidance, I needed to see Harold's deception firsthand. Pastor Williams greeted me warmly, eager to show off their renovated sanctuary. Your stepfather is a godsend, he beamed, pointing to the roof. When our original contractor's bid came in at $70,000, we thought we'd have to delay the youth center expansion. Then Harold stepped in, did the whole job for under $50,000, even threw in new gutters at no charge. I studied the ceiling, noting water stains already forming near the corners. 3 months after completion, and Harold's premium work was failing. He's certainly generous, I managed. More than generous, he's on our building committee now, helps review all contractor bids, says it's important to protect churches from price gouging. The pastor's sincerity made my stomach turn. Harold wasn't protecting anyone. He was eliminating competition. After service, I sat in my car reviewing emails on my phone. A search of the church's public minutes revealed Harold had joined the building committee 2 months before the roof project went to bid. He'd voted to reject 3 legitimate contractors before Pike & Sons miraculously offered to help. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. You were at the church. Harold's voice, controlled but tight. Donna Sheffield saw you. Donna, the church secretary and Harold's longtime friend. Of course. It's a public place, I said. I'm allowed to attend service. Funny how you've never shown interest in religion before. Funny how a $50,000 roof is failing after 3 months. Silence. Then, you have no idea what you're playing with, little girl. I'm 34, Harold, and I know exactly what I'm playing with. Fraud, theft, tax evasion through a shell company called Harbor Ridge Supplies. His breath caught. Where did you... Corporate registration is public record. Diana might have filed the paperwork, but the operating address traces back to a P.O. box paid for by Pike & Sons. Sloppy. Listen very carefully. His voice dropped to that dangerous whisper I'd heard through walls growing up. Whatever you think you know, you're wrong. And if you're smart, you'll keep your mouth shut. Or what? You'll grab my wrist like you grab Mom's? Leave bruises I'll have to explain? I've never... Tuesday, kitchen, broken coffee mug. I saw you. Another pause. Your mother's clumsy. She'll tell you herself. She already did. She's very well trained. You ungrateful, he caught himself. I raised you, paid for your college, gave you a family. You gave me a front row seat to abuse and corruption. Thanks for the education. Thursday, he said finally, we'll discuss this like family. Bring whoever you want. Boyfriend, girlfriend, I don't care. But come alone in spirit. Rachel, no cops, no lawyers, or your mother pays the price. Is that a threat? It's a promise. She's my wife, my house, my rules. He hung up. I immediately forwarded the call recording to Jordan and my backup email. Ohio's one-party consent law made it admissible, and his veiled threat against my mother added another charge to the list. That night, I discovered the final piece, a second set of books. Liam had mentioned it drunk, but I found proof in a discarded hard drive from Pike & Sons' old computer, a drive Harold had asked me to destroy last year but I'd kept, sensing its importance. The real book showed everything. Payments to Harbor Ridge Supplies for consulting, kickbacks to building committee members at 3 churches, even a monthly payment to Ron Hutchins at Riverside Wellness Center for preferential vendor status. But the worst was a folder labeled Insurance Jobs, photos of deliberately damaged roofs, broken pipes, cracked foundations, all at properties Harold later rescued with emergency repairs. He wasn't just stealing, he was creating victims. I called Jordan. I need protection for my mother. Can you arrange a welfare check during dinner tomorrow? Already ahead of you. I'll have patrol cars stationed nearby. The moment he gets violent, we move. And if he doesn't? Then you present your evidence calmly, let him respond, and we arrest him afterward. But Rachel, he will get violent. Men like Harold always do when cornered. I thought of my mother's bruises, her flinches, her desperate peacekeeping. I'm counting on it. Thursday morning, I prepared my final weapon, a presentation, not PowerPoint, too corporate. Instead, I printed photos, invoices, and bank records onto individual cards. Each one told part of the story, building to an undeniable conclusion. I packed them in a manila envelope labeled Family Photos, innocent enough to pass Harold's inspection. At noon, I texted my mother. Bringing my guest tonight, his name is Jordan. Please set an extra place. Her response was immediate. Harold wants to know what Jordan does. Community service, I wrote back. It wasn't a lie. By 3 o'clock, I transferred all evidence to Jordan's office and created multiple backups. I installed a recording app on my phone, disguised as a calculator, the tiny camera in my blazer's lapel pin, a gift from Jordan's tech specialist, would capture everything. At 4, Liam called. Dad's been drinking since noon, talking about respect and loyalty and family honor. Rachel, I'm scared. Of him or for him? Both. You don't know what he's capable of. Actually, I do. That's why this ends tonight. What if, his voice cracked, what if I helped? What if I testified about the ghost workers? My little brother, finally finding his spine. Then you'd be doing the right thing. He'll destroy me. He's already destroying you. Liam, piece by piece, until you're just like him. Silence. Then, I kept copies, timesheets, signed in his handwriting. They're in my truck. Bring them tonight, but stay clear when things escalate. When, not if. When Harold doesn't know any other way. As I drove to my childhood home for the last time, I thought about cycles, how violence breeds silence, how silence enables theft, how theft corrupts communities, how corruption spreads like Harold's cheap shingles, looking solid on the surface while rot spreads underneath. Tonight, I'd tear off those shingles, whatever was underneath, however ugly. At least it would be honest. My phone buzzed. Jordan. In position. Recording equipment is live. Remember, stay calm. State facts. Let him reveal himself. We're watching. I pulled into the driveway beside Harold's new truck. Purchased, I now knew, with money meant for homeless veterans. Through the window, I saw my mother arranging flowers, Harold gesturing with a beer, relatives gathering in ignorant celebration. Time to crash the party, with truth as my +1 and justice waiting in the wings. Thursday arrived crisp and bright, a perfect Ohio Thanksgiving that mocked the storm I was about to unleash. I spent the morning in my apartment, methodically preparing. The manila envelope of evidence sat on my kitchen counter while I practiced my approach in the mirror. Harold, I have some concerns about discrepancies in your charitable work. Too soft. You're a thief and a fraud. Too aggressive. I found some interesting patterns in your billing. Just right. Neutral enough to draw him out. Specific enough to spike his paranoia. At noon, Jordan called. Final briefing. The warrant's ready but sealed. I need probable cause to execute. Either he admits to fraud on recording, or he commits assault. Those are your triggers. What if he does neither? Then I arrest him leaving your mother's house based on the evidence alone. But Rachel, that's the slow path. Could take months to build the full case. If he incriminates himself tonight... It ends tonight, I finished. I know. I dressed carefully. Professional blazer with the camera pin. Comfortable shoes in case I needed to move quickly. The recording app hidden on my phone's home screen. The envelope tucked under my arm like any daughter bringing family photos to share. Jordan arrived at my apartment at 4, even in civilian clothes. He carried himself like law enforcement. Alert, contained, ready. We'd known each other since college, but I'd never seen him in work mode. You sure about this? He asked as we drove. Once we start, there's no stopping. He's been hurting my mother for 15 years, stealing for at least 5, I'm sure. And you understand if he touches you, even once, I'm coming through that door? I'm counting on it. We parked 3 houses down. Jordan would wait in the car, monitoring through my wire, ready to signal the patrol unit stationed around the corner. I walked to my childhood home alone, envelope clutched tight, heart steady despite everything. The house blazed with light and voices. Through the window, I counted heads. Harold's brother from Detroit, 3 church board members, 2 contractors who subbed for Pike & Sons, my mother's sister, various cousins. Perfect. The more witnesses, the harder for Harold to rewrite history later. Liam met me at the door, eyes darting nervously. Did you bring... My guest? He's running late. He'll join us for dessert. Relief and disappointment warred on his face. In his pocket, I glimpsed folded papers, the ghost worker timesheets. Rachel, my mother appeared, perfectly dressed but moving stiffly. New bruises, I realized, hidden under makeup and careful fabric. You look lovely. Where's this Jordan? On his way, I kissed her cheek, whispering, It's almost over. She pulled back, confused, but Harold's voice boomed from the dining room before she could respond. There's my compliance officer. Come in here. Rachel, tell everyone about your important work. The dining room was Norman Rockwell perfect, turkey gleaming, candles flickering, relatives smiling. Harold sat at the head like a king surveying his domain. He'd been drinking steadily. I could tell by the careful precision of his movements. Sit, he commanded, gesturing to the chair directly opposite him. We saved your place. I sat, placing the envelope beside my plate. His eyes tracked the movement. What's that? Pictures to share? Something like that. I accepted wine from a cousin, noting how my mother's hands shook as she carved turkey. But let's eat first. Plenty of time for show and tell. The meal progressed with forced cheer. Harold told stories about his charitable work, each more inflated than the last. How he'd saved the Lutheran Church $50,000 on their fellowship hall. How Riverside Wellness got a new roof basically at cost. How blessed Riverton was to have Pike and Sons. "Speaking of blessed," said Ron Hutchins from Riverside, "that invoice adjustment you sent was very generous. Harold, the board was thrilled." Invoice adjustment. I filed that away. "What's family for?" Harold raised his glass. "To community." Everyone drank. I sipped, watching him over the rim. The moment was approaching. As plates emptied and conversation lulled, Harold's attention returned to my envelope. "So, Rachel, going to share those photos?" "Actually," I said calmly, "I wanted to ask you about something first. The New Hope Church roof. I heard it's already leaking." Silence rippled out from my words. Harold's brother glanced between us. The church board members shifted uncomfortably. "Where'd you hear that?" Harold's voice carried warning. "Pastor Williams mentioned it. Said water's coming in near the corners. Strano for a 3-month-old premium roof, isn't it? Structures settle. Minor adjustments are normal. Is using grade B shingles instead of grade A also normal?" His face darkened. My mother made a small sound. "I don't know what you think you know." "I know you billed for architectural shingles at $95 per square." I opened the envelope, pulling out the first photo. "I know you bought standard 3-tab at $67. Second photo. "I know the difference went to Harbor Ridge Supplies." Third photo, the corporate registration. "Rachel," my mother pleaded, "not now, please." But I was already in motion. "I know Diana fronts the company, but you control it. I know Ron here has been getting kickbacks for steering contracts your way." Ron's face went white. "I know about the ghost workers whose hours pad every charity job." "You're confused," Harold said, but his control was slipping. "Misunderstanding standard business practices." "Is insurance fraud standard practice?" I laid out photos of damaged properties. "Creating problems so you can solve them?" Those were legitimate emergency repairs. "With damage that happened to occur right after you'd inspected the properties?" He stood abruptly, chair scraping. "Everyone out? Family matter?" "No," I remained seated. "Everyone stays. They deserve to know who they're dining with." "You little bitch," the mask finally cracked. "In my house, eating my food, wearing clothes I paid for." "Clothes you paid for with stolen charity funds. This house you mortgaged using inflated asset statements." I pulled out bank records. "Every single thing you own is built on lies." His fist slammed the table. Dishes jumped. My mother's gasp cut through the room. "Harold," his brother warned, "calm down." "Calm? She's destroying everything I've built." "Everything you've stolen," I corrected. "There's a difference." He moved then, faster than I expected, rounded the table in 3 strides. I stood to meet him, envelope clutched protectively. "Give me those papers." "They're copies. Originals are with—" His hand closed on my wrist, the same grip I'd seen him use on my mother, iron tight, designed to hurt without leaving marks. "Let go," I said clearly, "for the recording. You're going to destroy those papers, apologize to our guests, then we're going to forget this happened." "No." His grip tightened. Pain shot up my arm, around us. Relatives stood frozen, unwilling to intervene. "Yes." He leaned close, bourbon breath hot. "Or I'll—" "Harold Pike?" Everyone turned. Jordan stood in the doorway, badge visible, hand resting on his holstered weapon. Behind him, uniforms filled the hallway. "Detective Jordan Hale, Riverton PD. You're under arrest for assault, fraud, and tax evasion. Release Ms. Wynne immediately." Harold's hand opened. I stepped back, cradling my wrist, as Jordan moved forward with cuffs. "You called the cops?" Harold stared at me, disbelieving. "On family?" "You stopped being family the first time you hurt my mother." The room erupted. Ron Hutchins tried to leave but found his way blocked by officers. My mother collapsed into a chair, tears streaming. Liam pulled papers from his pocket, the timesheets, and handed them to a detective. As they led Harold out, he turned back once. "This isn't over." "Yes," I said firmly. "It is." Jordan squeezed my shoulder. "You did good. Got everything on tape. Between that and the assault, he's done." I looked around the ruined dinner, at family members avoiding eye contact, at my mother sobbing into her sister's shoulder. Victory tasted like ash and liberation combined. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we build the case, with your evidence and testimony, plus what we'll find when we execute search warrants tomorrow. Harold Pike is going away for a very long time." I nodded, suddenly exhausted. The weight I'd carried for years was lifting, leaving me empty and light. Tomorrow would bring questions, accusations, family rifts that might never heal. But tonight, for the first time in 15 years, my mother would sleep in a house without Harold Pike. That was worth any price. The dining room still smelled of turkey and violence. Half-eaten plates sat abandoned as Harold Pike was led away in handcuffs, his protests echoing from the driveway. I stood frozen in the aftermath, watching my family fracture like safety glass, still holding its shape but shattered beyond repair. "How could you?" My mother's voice cut through the chaos. She stood by the window, watching the police cars pull away. "How could you do this to us?" "He was stealing, Mom, hurting you. We could have handled it privately." She whirled on me, mascara streaking. "Did you think about what this means? The business? Our reputation? How am I supposed to show my face at church?" "The same church he robbed?" I kept my voice level. "Mom, he stole $50,000 from New Hope alone." Harold's brother Dave stepped forward, face flushed. "This is bullshit. Rachel, family doesn't call cops on family." "Family doesn't steal from charities," I shot back. "Family doesn't break bones." "What broken bones?" Dave scoffed. "Harold told me about you. Always dramatizing, making problems where there weren't any." I looked at my mother, waiting for her to speak up, to finally tell the truth about the bruises, the accidents, the emergency room visits explained away. She stayed silent, arms wrapped around herself. "Liam saw it too," I said. "Tell them." My half-brother stood near the door, looking young and lost. Dad could get rough sometimes, when he was stressed." "Rough?" Dave laughed bitterly. "My brother worked his ass off building this business, providing for ungrateful—" "With stolen money!" I slammed my hand on the table, making everyone jump. Every contract padded, every charity invoice inflated, that cabin on Lake Erie? Paid for by families who needed roof repairs. His boat? That's the Riverside Wellness Center's new wing. Ron Hutchins, still detained by an officer, spoke up desperately. "I didn't know the extent. Harold said standard markups." 30% kickbacks are standard?" Jordan interrupted, returning from outside. "Mr. Hutchins, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." As they led Ron away, the remaining guests scattered like roaches from light. Church board members mumbled excuses about needing to leave. Harold's subcontractors vanished without goodbyes. Within minutes, only family remained. My Aunt Grace approached cautiously. "Rachel, honey, maybe we should all calm down. Talk about this rationally." "There's nothing to discuss," Jordan said firmly. "Ms. Wynn provided evidence of systematic fraud. What happened tonight, the assault, that just accelerated our timeline." "What assault?" Dave demanded. "I didn't see any assault." "It's on tape." I rubbed my wrist where Harold's fingers had left red marks. "Audio and video." "You wore a wire? To Thanksgiving dinner?" My mother's horror cut deep. "You planned this?" "I planned to expose a criminal. The assault was his choice." "Criminal?" She said it like a foreign word. "That's your stepfather, the man who raised you. The man who terrorized us, who taught Liam to forge timesheets, who built his reputation on lies and theft. He loved us. He controlled us. There's a difference." Silence stretched taut. Finally, Jordan cleared his throat. "Mrs. Pike, we'll need you to come to the station tomorrow. Just routine questions." "Am I under arrest too?" Her voice was hollow. "No, ma'am. But if you were aware of the fraud—" "She wasn't," I said quickly. "She knew nothing about the business." My mother's look was unreadable. Gratitude? Resentment? Both? Liam finally moved from his spot by the door. "I'll testify. About the timesheets, the fake workers, all of it." "You'll destroy him," Dave spat. "Your own father." "He destroyed himself," Liam replied quietly. "I'm just done helping him do it." Dave stormed out, promising lawyers, revenge, family consequences. Grace hugged my mother and left with murmured sympathies. Soon it was just the four of us, Mom, Liam, Jordan, and me, standing in the wreckage of Thanksgiving. "What happens now?" Mom asked. Jordan outlined the process. Search warrants at dawn, asset freezing, federal involvement due to the charity angle. Harold would be held without bail given the assault charge and flight risk. "How long?" she whispered. "If convicted on all charges, 8 to 12 years. She swayed. Liam caught her elbow, guided her to a chair. "I need to ask," Jordan said gently. "Do you want to press charges for domestic violence? The historical pattern." "No," the word cracked like a whip. "No, I won't." "Mom." "I said no, Rachel. You've done enough." The accusation hung between us. I'd saved her, but lost her. Protected her, but betrayed her. The complexity of abuse. How victims could love their abusers, need them even while fearing them, struck me anew. Jordan touched my shoulder. "We should go. Process your statement while it's fresh." I nodded, gathering the scattered evidence photos. Each image represented hours of investigation, but also years of willful blindness. How many times had I seen the signs and looked away? How long had I prioritized family peace over justice? "Rachel," Liam's voice stopped me at the door. "Thank you. I know it doesn't feel like it now, but thank you." I met his eyes, Harold's eyes, but softer, still capable of change. "Take care of her. She'll need you." "What about you? You're her daughter too." I looked back at my mother, hunched at the table she'd polished to perfection for a dinner that ended in handcuffs. "Not anymore. I'm the one who destroyed everything." Outside, November air bit sharp and clean. Police tape already marked Harold's truck for impound. Tomorrow, investigators would tear through Pike & Sons, finding evidence I'd only guessed at. The charity network Harold had infected would audit their books. His reputation, so carefully built, would crumble in days. "You did the right thing," Jordan said as we reached his car. Did I? I thought of my mother's tears, Liam's lost expression, the family that would never forgive me. It doesn't feel right. Justice rarely does, but those families he cheated, the churches trusting him with donated money, your mother, even if she can't see it now, they needed someone to stand up. I nodded, not trusting my voice. As we drove away, I didn't look back at the house where I'd grown up, where I'd learned to stay quiet, avoid conflict, enable abuse through silence. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd traded family harmony for hard truth, acceptance for accountability. The cost was everything I'd known. But as Jordan called in our arrival at the station, as prosecutors prepared to take my statement, as the machinery of justice ground into motion, I felt something I hadn't in years. Free. Friday morning broke gray and unforgiving. By 6 a.m., search warrants were being executed across Riverton. I watched from Jordan's office as live updates poured in. Pike & Sons warehouse, Harold's home office, the Harbor Ridge Supplies storage unit. Each location yielded more evidence than we'd imagined. "They found a second laptop," Jordan reported, scanning his phone. "Completely separate books going back 7 years. Your stepfather was meticulous." "He always was," I said, sipping bitter station coffee. "Controlled every detail." My phone had been buzzing nonstop since dawn. Reporters, family members, Harold's lawyer. I ignored them all except one text from Liam. "Mom won't leave her room. The news trucks are outside." By 8 a.m., the story broke wide. Local contractor arrested in charity fraud scheme. Harold's mugshot stared from every local news site. Disheveled, angry, nothing like the community pillar he'd portrayed. The emails I'd scheduled before dinner began hitting their targets. Church boards, nonprofit directors, major donors, each received a timeline of Harold's fraud, documented with the evidence I'd gathered. No editorializing, just facts and figures. Let them draw their own conclusions. New Hope Church responded first. An emergency board meeting, effective immediately. By noon, they'd issued a statement distancing themselves from Harold and promising full cooperation with investigators. The placard honoring Pike & Son's generosity would be removed. Riverside Wellness just called, Jordan informed me. Ron Hutchins resigned. He's cooperating fully in exchange for reduced charges. The dominoes fell faster than I'd anticipated. 3 more contractors came forward, admitting to inflated invoices under Harold's direction. A former Pike & Sons employee revealed he'd been fired for questioning timesheet irregularities. The IRS announced an audit of Harbor Ridge Supplies. My phone rang. Mom. Are you happy? Her voice was raw. The house is surrounded by reporters. They're saying we'll lose everything. The business, the house, all of it. Mom, I'm sorry about the reporters, but... Sorry? You planned this. Wore a wire to Thanksgiving. Made sure there were witnesses. A bitter laugh. I should have known when you insisted on bringing someone. He was hurting you. That was my choice. My life. You had no right. I had every right. He was stealing from charities, from people who needed help. He was providing for his family. Something you never understood. With stolen money. Money you were happy to take for college. The accusation hit like a slap. She was right. I'd benefited from Harold's crimes before I knew they were crimes. That complicity had driven my determination to expose him. You're right, I said quietly. I did take it, which is why I had to make it right. By destroying us? By telling the truth? She hung up. I stared at the phone, wondering if we'd ever speak again without this between us. Northlake Systems issued a statement by lunch. They commended their compliance department for uncovering the fraud, specifically naming me as instrumental in protecting community resources. It was corporate speak for "we're not liable," but it also meant my job was safe, enhanced, even. You're trending, Jordan noted, showing me his phone. Thanksgiving whistleblower. People are calling you a hero. I don't feel like one. The Pike & Sons office became a crime scene. News footage showed boxes of records being loaded into FBI vans. The charity fraud had triggered federal jurisdiction. Employees stood in the parking lot, bewildered and unemployed. Families who'd depended on those jobs, now collateral damage. Saturday brought more revelations. Investigators found a safe containing $300,000 in cash. The skimmed percentages Harold hadn't yet laundered. Photos of damaged properties with detailed notes on creating natural failures. A list of building inspectors with payment amounts beside their names. This is bigger than we thought, Jordan told me. The FBI wants to interview you. This could be RICO territory. Racketeering. Harold hadn't just stolen. He'd built a criminal enterprise. The community divided sharply. Some praised my courage. Others condemned my betrayal. The Riverton Facebook page became a battleground of opinions. Church members who defended Harold Friday morning were calling for investigations by Sunday. Liam texted updates. Mom had finally eaten something. Lawyers were explaining asset forfeiture. Harold's brother was trying to claim the business equipment. Everything was chaos. Sunday arrived with unexpected news. 3 families Harold had helped after suspicious property damage were filing civil suits. The prosecutor was adding insurance fraud charges. Each new charge meant more years, less chance of early release. That evening, standing in my empty apartment, I listened to a voicemail from Pastor Williams. Rachel, I wanted to thank you personally. It took courage to come forward. The church. We should have seen it. Should have questioned. You saved us from enabling further harm. Small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. Monday's headlines screamed Harold's fall. Charity fraud ring exposed. Thanksgiving takedown. Local hero or family traitor? Each article rehashed the details, quoted anonymous sources, speculated on how deep the corruption ran. Northlake promoted me to senior compliance director. The board wanted someone who'd demonstrated unwavering ethical standards. The raise was substantial. Blood money. Part of me whispered, "Justice." Another part insisted. By Tuesday, Pike & Sons was officially dissolved. Assets frozen. Contracts canceled. Reputation destroyed beyond salvage. 23 years of building a business, gone in 5 days. The name Pike would be toxic in Riverton construction for generations. Final tally, Jordan called to report. Documented fraud exceeding $1.8 million, 14 properties with suspicious damage, 3 churches, 2 community centers, and 5 nonprofit organizations victimized. Your evidence started all of it. The numbers should have felt like vindication. Instead, they felt like the weight of every family affected, every job lost, every relationship severed. That night, I drove past my childhood home, dark windows, no cars. Mom had gone to stay with Grace. The house would be sold to pay restitution. Another casualty of Harold's choices, and mine. But as I sat there, engine idling, I remembered every bruise explained away, every financial discrepancy ignored, every warning sign dismissed for the sake of family peace. How many more years would we have enabled him? How many more victims created? My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "This is Maria Chen from Hands Across Riverton. We wanted to thank you. Because of your actions, we've recovered enough to repair 15 homes this winter. Families will be warm because you spoke up." I read it twice, then saved it. On the hardest days ahead, and there would be many, I'd need reminders of why I'd lit the fuse that exploded my family. Harold would be sentenced next month. Mom still wouldn't speak to me. Liam was trying to find work with the stigma of the Pike name. The wounds were fresh, maybe permanent. But 15 families would have solid roofs this winter. Churches would implement real oversight. Future victims were saved from Harold's schemes. The cost was everything. The value was immeasurable. I drove home to my empty apartment, to the silence I'd purchased with truth, carrying the weight of a whistleblower's paradox, saving strangers by sacrificing family. It was a price I'd pay again, even if it meant spending every Thanksgiving alone. Remembering the one where I finally said enough, the federal courthouse in downtown Columbus felt like a tomb that December morning, 6 weeks after Thanksgiving. I sat in the witness preparation room, reviewing my testimony one final time. Through the window, I watched protesters with signs, some supporting Harold, others demanding justice for the charities he'd defrauded. "Ready?" Jordan asked, adjusting his tie. He'd been promoted after the case, but still insisted on seeing it through. "No, but I'll do it anyway." The courtroom was packed. Media, community members, victims of Harold's schemes. I saw familiar faces from New Hope Church, representatives from Hands Across Riverton, employees who'd lost their jobs when Pike & Sons collapsed. My mother sat in the third row, dressed in black like she was attending a funeral. We hadn't spoken since November. Harold entered in shackles, orange jumpsuit replacing his contractor's confidence. 6 weeks in county jail had aged him. The swagger was gone, replaced by something harder, meaner. His eyes found mine immediately, promising retribution without words. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically: financial records, forged documents, testimony from Ron Hutchins and 3 other conspirators who'd flipped. The security footage from Thanksgiving played on screens, Harold gripping my wrist, his face contorted with rage. Several jurors flinched. When my turn came, I walked to the witness stand on steady legs, raised my right hand, swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. For 3 hours, I detailed what I'd discovered: each inflated invoice, every ghost employee, the shell company, the kickbacks, the staged property damage. Harold's attorney tried to paint me as a vindictive stepdaughter, but the evidence spoke louder than his insinuations. "Ms. Wynne," the prosecutor asked finally, "why did you wait until Thanksgiving to expose this?" I looked at my mother, then at Harold, because I needed him to show everyone who he really was. The community saw him as a benefactor. My mother saw him as a provider, only I saw the truth, until that night. And what truth was that? That he was a man who'd steal from churches while sitting in their pews, who'd take money meant for homeless families while building his lake house, who'd hurt anyone who threatened his image. I touched my wrist unconsciously, including family. Liam testified next, voice shaking but determined. He brought the USB drive of timesheets, explaining how Harold had taught him to forge signatures for efficiency. Several jurors took notes when he described being ordered to bill 40 hours of labor for workers who'd never set foot on job sites. The defense's case crumbled within hours. Character witnesses backed out. Harold's brother Dave made excuses about not being able to attend. The accountant Harold blamed for the irregularities had kept recordings of Harold explicitly directing the fraud. By day 3, Harold's attorney was bargaining, but the federal prosecutor, bolstered by public outrage and media attention, refused anything less than maximum charges. The verdict came Friday afternoon. Guilty on all counts: wire fraud, tax evasion, RICO violations, assault. The judge ordered immediate remand. Harold would wait for sentencing in federal custody, no bail. As marshals led him away, Harold turned one last time, not to his lawyer or the crowd, but to my mother. "Elaine," he called out, voice cracking. "I'm sorry." She didn't respond, hadn't looked at him once during the trial. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. I submitted a victim impact statement but didn't attend. Jordan called with the news. 15 years federal, no parole, asset forfeiture of everything tied to criminal proceeds, lifetime ban from contracting or nonprofit work. "It's over," he said. But it wasn't, not really. The house sold in January to pay restitution. Mom moved in with Grace, still not speaking to me. Liam found work with a competing contractor who respected his honesty, slowly rebuilding his reputation. The Pike name disappeared from Riverton's landscape, painted over or chiseled away. I kept working at Northlake, using what I'd learned to build better oversight systems. Occasionally, someone would recognize me, the Thanksgiving whistleblower, and reactions varied from gratitude to disgust. I learned to live with both. 1 year later, almost to the day, I received a letter, Mom's handwriting, postmarked from Florida, where she'd moved to escape the memories. "Rachel, I understand now. Not forgive, not yet, but understand. Harold wrote me from prison, still blaming everyone but himself, still claiming he was providing for us. That's when I knew you were right. A provider doesn't steal. A protector doesn't hurt. I'm not ready to talk. Maybe I never will be. But I wanted you to know. You saved me, even if I couldn't see it then. Mom." I read it sitting in my kitchen. November rain streaming down windows. Outside, families were preparing for Thanksgiving, planning gatherings that would end with laughter instead of handcuffs. My phone buzzed. "Liam. Want to grab dinner Thursday? Nothing fancy. Just us?" I smiled, typing back, "Yes." It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't absolution, wasn't the family reconciliation movie's promise, but it was a start. 2 siblings who'd survived Harold Pike's empire of lies, finding their way forward. The truth had cost me everything I'd known, my family, my home, my place in the only world I'd grown up in, but it had given me something more valuable. The knowledge that when tested, I'd chosen justice over comfort, truth over silence, right over easy. Some prices are worth paying, even if you spend the rest of your life paying them. As I prepared a simple meal for one, I thought about the 15 families warm under new roofs, the churches with honest contractors, the future victims spared Harold's schemes. They'd never know my name or what it cost to protect them. That was okay. Heroes in real life don't get parades. They get exile and eventually, if they're lucky, peace. I raised my wineglass to the empty room, to the family I'd lost and the integrity I'd kept. Outside, Riverton prepared for another Thanksgiving, and somewhere in federal prison, Harold Pike ate institutional turkey, his empire of theft finally completely irreversibly finished. The oak table where it all ended was sold at auction, but the truth I spoke there, that lived on, protecting every charity, every family, every vulnerable person Harold would never touch again. It was enough. It had to be. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let me know your thoughts on Rachel's choice. What would you have done in her position?